It was almost 10 at night. Most of the office lights were off. The building was quiet. Only a few people were still inside, finishing up their work. One of them was the young woman from the customer support team. She sat alone in the break room, under the soft light above the vending machine. Her uniform shirt looked a little too big on her, and her eyes looked tired, like someone who hadn't slept properly in days. She had a small plastic container in front of her. Inside it, there were just a few broken crackers and a half-empty bottle of water. She didn't complain. She just sat silently, slowly chewing. She stared at the table, lost in thought. Unknowingly, someone was watching her from the hallway. Mr. Daniels, a senior executive at the company, had stayed back late that evening to review some documents. As he passed by the break room, he noticed the girl, tired, quiet, alone. He recognized her. She was the one who worked double shifts almost every week. Morning shift, evening shift, even on weekends sometimes. He paused. Something about her looked different. It wasn't just that she was tired. It was the way she sat, like someone carrying a lot of weight on her shoulders. He quietly stepped away, not wanting to make her uncomfortable. But something about that moment stayed in his mind. The next day, he noticed her again. She was already at her desk before 8 a.m., typing quickly, taking calls, managing files. Always polite, always quiet. She didn't join the others for coffee breaks. She ate lunch at her desk, usually something very small, a banana, a packet of biscuits, or sometimes nothing at all. One afternoon, he walked past the support area and heard one of the managers saying, "She's a machine. Never calls in sick, never late, never complains." Another said, "She's doing the job of 2 people. I don't know how she manages." Still, no one seemed to know her name well. They just called her the girl from night shift. Later that week, Mr. Daniels asked the HR department for her file. Her name was Amina, 25 years old. No previous complaints, no time off. Clean record. She had taken extra shifts every month for the last year. She worked in both the support and data teams just to make enough. Mr. Daniels was surprised. Most people would burn out. But not her. She was still going, day after day. That night he stayed late again, on purpose. Around 9:45, he saw her heading to the break room. He waited a moment, then slowly followed. This time he walked in. She looked up, a little startled. "Oh, sorry," she said softly, starting to stand. "I was just going to finish up." No, you're fine," he said kindly. "It's late." "You're still working?" She nodded. "Just had a few things to finish." He glanced at her food, or what was left of it. "Just some dry crackers again. Didn't get dinner?" He asked gently. She gave a small smile. "I usually don't. It's okay. There's sometimes leftover lunchboxes from the meetings. If no one takes them, I don't mind." Her voice was soft, almost embarrassed. Mr. Daniels was quiet for a second. He didn't want to make her feel ashamed. He said, "If there are extras, of course. You should take them. No shame in that." She gave a polite nod. "Thank you, sir." He watched her for a moment. There was something about her eyes. They weren't just tired from work. They were tired from life. She packed up the rest of her things, quietly thanked him again, and left the break room. Mr. Daniels stood there for a long moment. Something about that girl bothered him. Not in a bad way, in a way that made him feel like he had missed something important. She worked harder than anyone, never asked for anything. But tonight, she had asked, not for money, not for help, just for food. Why? That question would not leave his mind, and he was about to find out the answer soon, in a way that would change everything. The next day started like any other. The office was full by 9 a.m. phones ringing, keyboards clicking, people walking fast with coffee in hand. But Mr. Daniels wasn't focused on his usual meetings. His eyes kept drifting toward the support section, toward the girl named Amina. She was already at her desk, speaking kindly to customers over the phone. Her voice was calm, her posture straight. But if you looked closer, her hands trembled slightly when she typed, and her eyes looked a bit red, as if she hadn't slept much again. Mr. Daniels found himself watching her without realizing it. She moved quickly, completing tasks, answering emails, helping coworkers without hesitation. Yet she never spoke about herself. She didn't join in gossip or laugh loudly like others. She stayed in her little world, focused, quiet, and invisible to most. At lunch, he passed by the cafeteria. His eyes scanned the tables. No sign of Amina. He turned the corner and saw her again, sitting near the emergency staircase with a bottle of water and a piece of dry bread. Alone. It didn't make sense. She worked so much. She was always early, always available. So why was she sitting on stairs with barely anything to eat? Later in the day, Mr. Daniels called HR again. This time, he wanted to know more, but carefully. Has she ever asked for help? He asked. The HR woman shook her head. No, sir. Never. In fact, we once offered her an assistance program, but she politely refused, said others needed it more. Mr. Daniels leaned back, thinking. This girl had pride, strength, but she was clearly struggling. That evening, as the office emptied once more, Mr. Daniels stayed behind. He sat in his car across the street, waiting. At 9:30 p.m., he saw her step out, carrying a small cloth bag. She walked slowly to a second-hand car and got in. He hesitated, then started his engine and followed. It wasn't far. She drove through the city and into an older part of town. The buildings were small, paint fading on the walls. She parked in front of a narrow apartment block. The area was dim, but clean. He watched from a distance as she got out of the car, opened the back seat, and took out 2 paper lunchboxes, the ones the office gave during meetings. As soon as she stepped toward the building, the door on the ground floor opened fast. 3 children ran out barefoot onto the porch, a boy and 2 girls. One of the girls looked no older than 6. They ran straight to Amina, hugging her legs and reaching for the food. She smiled for the first time that day. It wasn't a tired smile. It was full of warmth. She gave them each a box and gently guided them inside. Mr. Daniel sat frozen in his car. He had expected maybe an old parent, maybe a small rented room, but not 3 children. Not this. He stayed there for a few more minutes. He could see the light turn on in the small living room. Shadows moved, the children dancing or playing. He saw Amina sit on the floor with them, sharing the little food, cutting it into pieces. So everyone got a fair share. The same tired girl from the break room was a mother or something like it to these children. Mr. Daniels felt something twist in his chest. He had seen people fake things. He had seen excuses. But this was real. He didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, before anyone arrived at the office, he sat at his desk and opened her file again. He read more carefully this time. Amina Rafiq, employee since age 22, 3 dependents listed. No disciplinary issues, no leave requests in 18 months. No emergency contacts. At the very bottom was a note. Widowed. Husband passed away in site accident 2 years ago. Also caring for her late sister's children. Mr. Daniels slowly closed the file. The girl didn't just work hard because she wanted a raise. She worked because 3 little lives depended on her. For food, for love, for everything. And now Mr. Daniels knew something had to be done. Quietly, carefully, but it had to start now, because behind the tired girl in the break room was a warrior no one had seen. The office felt normal again the next day. People moved around with their coffee, chatting about weekend plans and promotions. But for Mr. Daniels, things weren't the same anymore. He couldn't stop thinking about what he saw last night. That Small apartment, those barefoot children, and Amina so young, yet carrying a mountain of responsibility on her shoulders. Around noon, he walked to the cafeteria. The meeting room next to it had leftover boxed meals from an executive lunch. Fancy chicken wraps, pasta, fruits all untouched. People usually didn't bother with leftovers. They got thrown away most of the time. Just as he turned to leave, he heard a soft voice behind him. "Excuse me, sir." He turned. It was Amina. She looked nervous, her eyes low. Her hands were tight around her work badge. I was wondering," she said carefully, "if there were any extra lunch boxes left from the meeting." Mr. Daniels blinked. This was the first time she had ever spoken to him like this, and she had no idea he already knew about her situation. "Yes," he said. Softly, "There are plenty left." Her eyes lifted slightly, surprised by his calm tone. "If no one's using them," she said, "I would like to, maybe take 2. He nodded. "Take as many as you need." She looked relieved but still quiet. "Thank you, sir. I don't mean to be a problem." "You're not a problem," he said gently. "You're doing a great job here." She gave a small, polite smile, then quickly grabbed the boxes and walked out. No one else noticed her. No one even looked her way. But Mr. Daniels saw her. He watched as she walked toward the elevator, holding the boxes carefully like they were something precious. Probably already imagining the smile on those kids' faces. Back in his office, Mr. Daniels sat at his desk, thinking hard. He couldn't give her charity. She was too proud for that. And it would embarrass her in front of others. He had to help, but in a way that felt earned. A way that kept her dignity. That afternoon, he called the head of HR and the manager of her department. "I want to nominate one of our employees for the Excellence in Duty bonus," he said. The HR head raised an eyebrow. "That award is usually for someone with high sales or innovation. This time," Mr. Daniels said firmly, "it will go to someone who's been holding this company up quietly, without any recognition." They agreed, and he signed off on a large bonus bigger than what most expected. But that wasn't enough. He also asked HR to put Amina in the new Employee Advancement Program, where selected workers get extra training and a chance for promotion. No one would think it was charity. It would just look like she was chosen for her hard work. 2 days later, Amina received an email. "Congratulations. You've been selected for the Employee Advancement Program and awarded a special bonus for outstanding service." She stared at the screen in disbelief. She walked to HR, thinking there had been some mistake. I didn't apply for anything," she said softly. The HR lady smiled. "You were selected. We noticed your work. This is real." That night, Amina walked into her small apartment with grocery bags instead of office leftovers. The children stared at the food. Fresh fruits, eggs, bread, even cookies. "Did someone give this to you?" her niece asked. "No," Amina said, hugging them tight. "I earned it." For the first time in many months, they sat around the table and ate a warm meal. One that didn't come from a leftover lunchbox. Meanwhile, back at the office, Mr. Daniels sat quietly in his chair. He didn't tell anyone what he did. He didn't expect thanks. He only hoped she would be okay. But inside, something had changed. He began to look at his workplace differently. Not just numbers and results, but people. Real people with real struggles. And this was just the beginning, because what he didn't know was that Amina's story wasn't over. There were still deeper truths waiting to be uncovered. And one day, they would shock him even more. A week passed. Amina still worked the same way, quiet, focused, never late. But something had changed in her. She walked with just a little more confidence now. She even smiled once or twice at the receptionist. The new bonus had helped her buy proper groceries, pay rent on time, and fix the broken heater in the apartment. Still, she didn't know who had helped her. She thought maybe someone in HR noticed her work. She had no idea it was the executive, who stayed back late one night and followed her car through the dark streets. Mr. Daniels, on the other hand, had become more and more curious about her life outside the office. One evening, he sat in his car again, across from her building. He had no plan to interfere. He just wanted to be sure she and the children were doing okay. It had started to rain. The streets were shiny and quiet. He saw the lights flicker on in her apartment. The curtains were old, but through a small gap, he saw her sitting with the kids, helping them with schoolwork. The youngest sat in her lap, holding a pencil, struggling to form letters. There was no TV, no toys. Just a table, books, and their soft voices. Suddenly, there was a knock on her door. Mr. Daniels sat up straight. Two teenage boys stood outside, talking to Amina. She looked uncomfortable. The boys laughed and said something that made her step back quickly. One tried to peer inside, but she blocked the doorway. Mr. Daniels felt a rush of worry. The boys eventually walked away, but Amina didn't look calm. She locked the door and closed the curtains tightly. The next morning, he couldn't stop thinking about it. Were those boys trouble? Was she safe? Later that day, he called someone from security and asked them to do a quiet check on that neighborhood. The report came back the next day. It was not good. There had been break-ins in that block. 2 robberies, a stabbing 2 streets over. And Amina's building had no proper security, no cameras, and a broken lock on the main entrance. Mr. Daniels felt a chill run through him. She was raising 3 children there. Alone. That same day, during a general team meeting, he made an announcement. "We're starting a new partnership," he said, "with a local housing support organization. Employees in need, especially those raising children, will have access to safer housing options with partial support from the company." People clapped, not knowing who had inspired this change. But Amina sat quietly in the corner, unsure what to think. She hadn't asked for anything. Later, she got another email from HR. "You qualify for our new family support housing assistance. If interested, we'll help relocate you to a safer place closer to the office. No cost for the first 3 months." Amina couldn't believe it. She read the email again and again. Who was doing this? She clicked yes. 2 weeks later, she and the children moved into a small apartment in a better part of town. It wasn't fancy, but it had working locks, heating, clean stairs, and a small park nearby. The kids loved it. They played outside for the first time in months. One evening, after settling in, Amina stood at the window, watching them run across the grass. Her heart felt lighter. Her feet didn't ache as much. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to breathe deeply. Back at the office, Mr. Daniels saw her walk in that Monday morning with a different kind of glow. She still worked hard, still quiet. But now she was no longer carrying the same invisible weight. Mr. Daniels said nothing. He just gave her a kind nod when they crossed paths. She smiled, but deep down, she still didn't know why things had started changing for her. Was watching over her? And Mr. Daniels still didn't know the full truth either, because one thing hadn't been revealed, yet something hidden in her file. Something personal, something that would shake him even more. The new apartment brought a kind of peace Amina hadn't felt in years. The children laughed more. They slept better. She didn't have to double lock the doors out of fear anymore. Life was still hard, but it was finally safe. At work, Amina kept going. Still early every morning, still the last one to leave. But now, something inside her had changed. She no longer looked tired in the same way. The dark circles under her eyes had started to fade. And once, someone from accounting swore they saw her laugh in the elevator. Just once. Mr. Daniels noticed the difference too. It made him feel something deep, pride? Maybe, but more than that, a quiet respect. She never complained, never took shortcuts, never even asked for help, even when she needed it most. One afternoon he sat at his desk flipping through employee profiles for an upcoming recognition ceremony. When he came across Amina's file again, he paused. There, at the bottom, was a note he hadn't paid much attention to before. Emergency contact, none listed. That was strange. He called HR and asked gently, "Do we have any emergency contact on file for her?" The HR assistant hesitated. "Sir, actually, when her husband passed, she removed all contacts. She has no family left, from what we can tell. She's the only legal guardian for her sister's kids, too." Mr. Daniels froze. "Wait, her sister's kids?" "Yes, 2 of them. After her sister died in a car accident, Amina took them in. Didn't want them to end up in foster care." He leaned back in his chair. That meant the 3 children weren't all hers. She had taken responsibility for her late sisters. Kids in addition to her own. No help, no partner, no parents. Just her. Mr. Daniels sat quietly, processing what he just learned. He had already helped her, but now it felt like he hadn't done nearly enough. That evening, he pulled up the company's scholarship and education fund policy. Amina wasn't eligible by position or department, but he decided to change that. By morning, a new memo went out. Scholarship assistance extended to all full-time employees with dependent children in primary school. Amina got the notice and didn't know what to feel. It almost seemed too perfect, like the universe was finally answering her silent prayers. That same day, another thing happened. Amina was asked to speak in the new employee orientation session. She was surprised. "Me? Yes," said her team leader. "Just to share how you managed to stay so focused. You're a quiet inspiration around here." Amina smiled nervously and agreed. The day of the session came. A group of new hires sat in the small training room. Mr. Daniels stood at the back, watching. Amina stood at the front, hands lightly shaking, but voice steady. "I didn't come here to be noticed," she said. "I came here because I had no choice but to survive. Life gave me 3 little reasons to keep going, and I promised I wouldn't let them down." People listened, quietly moved. One girl in the front row had tears in her eyes. Mr. Daniels felt something stir inside him again. This woman, once nearly invisible in the break room, now had a room full of people hanging on her every word. And still, she didn't know he was the one behind the changes, the bonus, the housing, the new policies. But she would soon, because the company's annual recognition day was coming. And this time, Mr. Daniels planned to do something public, not just to reward her, but to honor her. He had learned something powerful from Amina's quiet strength. Some heroes don't wear capes. Some carry lunchboxes, and some keep smiling through pain, because they know others are depending on them. But what would happen when the truth finally came out? Would Amina accept the attention? Would she allow herself to be seen? The answer was coming. And so was the day that would change her life forever. The company's annual recognition day was always a big event. Balloons, banners, long tables of food, and employees dressed better than usual. It was the one day every year where hard work was publicly celebrated. People cheered for team leaders, top salespeople, and senior managers. But this year, something different was planned, something that only Mr. Daniels and a few others knew. Amina had no idea. She almost didn't attend. Her first thought was to skip the event and catch up on work. She didn't think awards were for people like her. She didn't make speeches. She didn't lead projects. She just did her job. Quietly, but her team leader insisted. "Just come. It's just 1 hour. We all deserve a little break." So she came, dressed in her usual clothes, nothing fancy. She stood in the back of the room, sipping a small cup of juice, planning to slip out early. Mr. Daniels stepped up to the stage. The room slowly grew quiet. "We have a tradition here," he began, "to honor those who go above and beyond. But today, We're doing something we've never done before." People looked around curious. "This isn't about sales numbers or big ideas," he continued. "This is about strength. This is about courage. And this is about heart." A few people shifted in their seats. Some looked at one another, wondering what was going on. "We have someone in this room," he said, "who worked double shifts without a single complaint. Someone who raised 3 children, 2 of whom aren't even hers, while working harder than anyone else in this company." Amina's hands froze. Her cup trembled slightly. She never asked for praise. She never asked for help. But she has quietly inspired more people than she knows. Mr. Daniels paused, then smiled. "Amina Rafiq, please come to the stage." The room turned, heads swiveled. People started clapping slowly. Amina stood frozen. She looked confused, her eyes wide. For a second, it seemed like she might run away. But someone from her team gently touched her shoulder and whispered, "Go, that's you." Amina walked slowly to the stage, her heart racing. The applause grew louder. When she reached Mr. Daniels, she tried to speak, but her voice cracked. He handed her a plaque beautifully carved, with her name and the words, "Silent Strength Award, for the quiet heroism that changes lives." Tears welled up in Amina's eyes. The whole room was now on their feet. Mr. Daniels leaned close and said quietly, "You earned every bit of this." She looked at him, really looked at him for the first time, and something clicked in her mind. The new policy, the housing help, the scholarship, the way he always seemed to appear when she needed something most. She whispered, "It was you, wasn't it?" He smiled softly. "It was you who made it possible." Amina held the plaque tightly to her chest. She didn't say much. She didn't have to. Her eyes said everything. After the ceremony, people came up to her, people who had never even noticed her before. "I had no idea. You're amazing. Thank you for sharing your story." She smiled politely, still shy, still humble. But inside, something had bloomed. For the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. And that night, when she walked into her apartment, the 3 children jumped on her, asking why she was late. She showed them the plaque. They gasped. Her youngest nephew touched the golden letters with wide eyes. "You got an award?" "I guess I did," she said softly. "Because you're the best?" He asked. She kissed the top of his head. "No," she said. "Because someone saw me, even when I thought no one did." Outside, the stars shined quietly. Inside, a woman who once begged for leftover food stood tall with her name written in gold, her story finally heard. But even after all this, one more twist of fate was waiting. Something that would not only change Amina's life forever, but Mr. Daniels too. A week passed after the recognition day, but the feeling inside Amina's heart stayed strong. For the first time in her life, people knew her name, not because of a mistake, but because of something good. Coworkers now smiled at her. Some even asked for advice. She wasn't invisible anymore. Her children taped the award to the living room wall, right above the small table where they did their homework. Every night, one of them would look at it and say, "Mama, we're proud of you." But even as Amina's world became brighter, something unexpected was happening in Mr. Daniels' life. One morning, while reviewing staff files for another company project, he came across a form that caught his eye. It was from a school, Amina's nephew's school. It had been sent to the company's scholarship office by mistake, since Amina had listed her workplace as a reference. He glanced through it to make sure everything was correct, but then he saw a last name on the form that made him stop breathing. Rafiq. Amina. Rafiq. He looked again at the child's name, Hamza Rafiq. The name stirred something in his memory. Years ago, before Mr. Daniels became an executive, he had been a volunteer mentor at a small charity program that supported underprivileged children. He had connected deeply with one little boy there, quiet, shy, curious about everything. His name had been Hamza. Back then, Hamza would come alone to the center. He had no shoes most days, but he had the brightest eyes, and every week, he would wait at the gate early just to see Mr. D, as he called him. Mr. Daniels suddenly stood up from his desk. Could it be the same boy? That afternoon, he sent a message to Amina's team, asking her to stop by his office for a casual conversation. He didn't want to alarm her, just talk. When she came in, she looked a little nervous. "I hope I'm not in trouble," she said quietly. "Not at all," he smiled. "I just wanted to ask. Your nephew, Hamza, how old is he?" "He just turned 10, she replied. "And has he ever mentioned a place called Learning Path Foundation?" Her eyes widened. "Yes, he still talks about it sometimes. He used to go there before I got custody. He always said his favorite person was someone named Mr. D." Mr. Daniels felt something warm in his chest. He smiled. "That was me." Amina blinked in surprise. "What? I used to volunteer there, years ago. I mentored a boy named Hamza. He was smart. Loved puzzles, always wore a green scarf." Amina slowly covered her mouth with her hand. "That's him. That's really him." For a few moments, neither of them said anything. Then Mr. Daniels quietly said, "I think we were meant to cross paths again." Amina smiled, her eyes filling with tears. Maybe we were. Suddenly everything made sense. The way he had understood her struggle. The way help had come not just from a kind boss, but from someone who already knew what it meant to look after a child in need. Their connection was no longer just about work. It was about something deeper. Something fate had written long ago. Mr. Daniels leaned back and said, "Hamza changed me, you know. After he left the program, I wanted to do more. That's why I worked harder. That's why I built myself up to be in a position where I could help people better." Amina whispered, "And now you've helped him again, without even knowing." They sat quietly for a moment, two people brought together not by power or position, but by compassion, memory, and the invisible thread of destiny. That evening, Amina went home and told Hamza everything. The boy's eyes lit up. "Mr. D? That? Mr. D, he still remembers me?" "He never forgot you," Amina said softly, "and neither would she. But one final surprise still waited. Something that would take this story from unexpected to unforgettable." Weeks passed, and life started to feel different for both Amina and Mr. Daniels. Amina still worked just as hard, but now she wasn't alone in the dark. People in the company knew her story. Some even started asking her for advice. Younger employees looked up to her. Parents came to her for tips. She was no longer just the quiet girl at the back of the break room. She was a symbol of strength. And Mr. Daniels? He found himself thinking more and more about the people behind the job titles. Not just numbers on spreadsheets, but stories, struggles, hidden heroes. One morning, the company held a small event at a local school. They sponsored Hamza's school. A new library was being donated in the name of the company's Silent Strength program. Inspired by Amina's journey, Amina and her children were invited to attend. Hamza stood proudly next to Mr. Daniels during the ribbon cutting. The two shared a quiet moment, just like old times. "You remember the puzzle you gave me when I was little?" Hamza asked. Mr. Daniels laughed. "You mean the one you finished in 5 minutes?" Hamza smiled. "I still have it." Amina watched from a few feet away, tears in her eyes. She had spent so long carrying everything alone. Now her child was standing with someone who once gave him hope and still did. After the ceremony, a local news reporter approached them. She had heard about the story from someone in HR and wanted to do a small feature for a community newspaper. Amina hesitated at first. She had never wanted fame. But then Mr. Daniel said, "Sometimes stories like yours light the way for others still in the dark." Amina nodded slowly. "Okay, but only if it helps someone." The article came out a week later titled, "From Break Room to Boardroom Respect, the quiet warrior of Willowtech. It wasn't a viral story. It didn't make national headlines, but it reached enough people to matter. One day, an email arrived. In Amina's inbox. It was from a young woman in another city. It read, "I saw your story. I'm a single mom too. I almost gave up. But then I saw you didn't. Thank you for reminding me that I still can." Amina sat there, staring at the screen, smiling through tears. And from that moment, she understood her journey wasn't just about survival. It was about impact. Years later, Amina became a department leader. She didn't change who she was. Still humble, still kind. But now she helped others rise too. She created flexible work programs for single parents. She made sure leftover food always found its way to employees who needed it. She started mentorship groups. And most of all, she never let anyone feel invisible again. Mr. Daniels eventually retired. On his last day, he handed Amina a small gift, an old photo of a little boy in a green scarf holding a puzzle with a note that said, "The reason I kept going was you." She hugged him tightly, no words needed. Because sometimes in life, the quietest moments tell the loudest stories. A tired girl in a break room, a hungry child with a green scarf, an executive who paused long enough to care, and a bond that reminded the world, true heroes don't wait for attention. They just keep going and quietly change everything.